Hello, hello. How are you, Anna? Okay, so here's the deal. I took your professor's presentation that you sent over and I truncated it down to about 48 slides. And I'm going to get through part of it in one presentation, part of it in another one. But I definitely want you to take some time and look at, and part of his presentations is this. You He has functionality in there like click to load that I normally don't use when I do presentations, especially when I do them over Screencast-O-Matic, that is this program that I'm using right now, Screencast-O-Matic, to record this for you. So Anatomy Zone, this link will take you out to a YouTube channel for Anatomy Zone, and this gentleman has been at this for a number of years. He has a number of presentations on there. They're wonderful. They're great to kind of have playing in the background while you're studying your own stuff. Love them. He also has a really wonderful, like Australian accent. But Neuroanatomy Basics, I think you'll really like that. Also, I clicked over and saved one for the cranial nerves. He has a real simple mnemonic in there. He has a mnemonic both for the nerves themselves as well as their function. And then after this, which is not embedded yet because I have yet to finish this presentation, you'll have the links to the presentations that I'll be creating. So you'll have them in the PowerPoint presentation, but the links will then take you over to my YouTube channel where I have, oh God, I don't even know how many videos for exercise for my kinesiology courses. So as we go through this right now, I have 15 minutes of free time for each presentation. So some of the stuff I'm just going to rip right through. I'm not going to worry too much about it. By now, you should already know the CNS, the PNS, and the ENS and know the differences between those. And as you go through this, kind of understand some of this terminology, right? With the central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and the enteric nervous system, how they all kind of tie together with the different parts of the central nervous system and the autonomic or this parasympathetic and sympathetic. So you have these different systems that all kind of work together. That's one of the wonderful things about the human body. It kind of works as an integrated unit. And you have to be aware of how one thing, if you pull on a string over here, how it raises a picture on the other side of your room, or how you move one thing over here, it changes something over here. So you have to understand that they all kind of work together. This I'm going to breeze right through. We'll get into this real quick, and you and I talked about this, where you have these receptors as well as kind of like in the human body. From the kinesiology side, I talked many times about muscle spindles and what are called GTOs. Those are embedded in the tendons themselves, and they measure the actual tensile flexibility, if you will. Sorry, I say tensile. The flexibility in the muscle, or flexibility or rate of change of stretch in the tendon itself, and they have a protective mechanism built in to protect the human body from wrecking itself. Somatic versus autonomic. And when you look at these two, you kind of evaluate in terms of, all right, what would then be part of the autonomic nervous system? Okay, something like digestion, heart rate, to a lesser degree breathing, because some of the stuff you can actually control. And you see high-end athletes who will actually get quite good at controlling the autonomic nervous system. And what they're trying to do is they're really trying to bed down the fight or flight response. So for example, somebody who is running a very long distance race, they try and they train themselves to work at a level and be able to work in a non-stressed level. In the fitness industry, we've had over the last couple of years through the use of wearables, like an Apple Watch, heart rate variability has become a big measure of a person's overall wellness. And if that person is in the fight or flight response, or if they're in rest and digest. And it measures the variability between the actual heart rates, meaning your heart contracts and you have a QRS complex. It may look like at 60 per minute you have 1 per second, but it's actually one at 0.885, the other one's at 1.1, the other one's at 0.9, the other one's at 0.885. So there's a variability that you see. And when somebody is operating from that rest and digest place and their central nervous system is kind of quieted down, you end up having this high degree of variability between heart rates. It's an interesting little phenomenon that's become more and more prevalent in the industry itself. So in this case, you have neurons. Let me get my face out of the way down here. You and I talked about this. in our conference call. The axons, the dendrites. When I was in undergrad, I always jokingly called like dendrites, you know, like, oh, there's your dendrites. Oh, there they are. You know, and I don't know why I keyed into this, but I view dendrites as like the udders on a cow for some reason. I have no idea why I did, but I did. But those are the ones that receive the stimulus, right? And they get that kind of like economic or environmental feedback loop that starts the process. So you know the dendrites, if they're receiving stimuli, what side are they on, the afferent or the efferent? Well, you know they're on the afferent side because a lot like the stove, on the hand on a hot stove, as soon as that signal goes up, hey dummy, your hand's on a hot stove, the afferent side signals, you better pick your hand up or boop, you're going to burn your hand. So you know from this side, the dendrites are all about taking information in and transferring it up the central nervous system. And so that information is sent through the axon itself. And the axon itself can have what's called a myelinated sheath around it. And that sheath, let me go ahead and zip through these. The sheath itself, it's fat. And you'll have this fatty tissue, and that myelination that you have allows for the actual impulse, the electrical impulse, not to go straight through, but it actually allows for greater conductivity as it jumps from gap to gap to gap in the myelinations. So with neurons themselves, and I just want to point this out, in the video that I presented earlier in the very first slide, he uses blue-red instead of red-blue. Just realize for afferent, efferent, one is the signal coming in, going up to the spinal cord, perhaps going across only the thoracolumbar region, not all the way up to the actual brainstem itself and to the brain for processing, and then back down out to the muscles to pick one's hand off the hot stove. There's actually a wonderful video that I'll probably embed in another presentation to you where they talk about hockey goalies who, when they react to a shot on goal, they're not even really reacting to the shot on goal, and they don't even think about it. And there's an axiom in athletics where a thinking athlete is a slow athlete, and that is quite frankly that hockey goalie is responding to a series of choreography out in front of him that his body recognizes just from years of practice, and his ability to respond to a shot on goal, if it were to actually go up the central nervous system, up to the brain, back down the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system, the response time would be too slow and the actual puck would end up in the back of the net and he would never ever stop a puck. Some movement patterns have to go across the thoracolumbar region. Otherwise, it's just the response time would be too slow. All right, so we talked a little bit about this. We talked about how sensory neurons have an afferent side to them that takes information up the central nervous system for the body to make changes. Now, I did take some notes here while we were talking. I do have some notes that I wrote down while we went through this. And what I like about this is I talk about the three different types of receptors. And they if you look at this, you have intero, proprio, and extero. And these are real easy to remember, right? You have extero, external, proprio, position, and they have intero, right? Those are within the actual organs and within the body itself. So you have this really easy mnemonic of intero, internal, proprio, position, extero, external. And in my day-to-day activities, as somebody who deals in the movement practices and working with clients and actually working with athletes to make them better athletes, I spend most of my time working with these proprioception, where one's body is in space, how to understand how to move one's body. So often, you know, I work with clients where the big thing that my 80-year-old client, Ida, has, she doesn't want to slip and fall on the ice in the wintertime. So we have to teach her where her body is in space so she doesn't actually have an issue with that. So I've worked very heavily in proprioception and body and spatial awareness. The other terminology for that is kinesthetic awareness, or loosely stated in our parlance on the other side of campus, K awareness. Now I'm going to zip through this. we talked a little bit about this earlier and talked a little bit about interneurons themselves. And the interneurons actually, they actually allow the body, like I mentioned, to function at a much higher level. And like we talked about, you know, previously in that hockey player example, if the actual processing were to go through the entire loop of the central nervous system back down to the peripheral nervous system, it would never happen. But when you look at this and you look at how this works, you have the motor neuron on one side, you have the sensory neuron over here, so you have the afferent sensory neuron, you have the motor neuron over here. In between is this interneuron in purple that allows the communication to happen to say, stove is hot, take hand off stove, boom, 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 and your hand is off the stove in a blink, in a fraction of a second. So it is this communication that happens across the thoracolumbar regions, another terminology we use across campus, that allows movement to happen quickly. So with somatic and visceral and comparing those, somatic is more about the skeletal muscles. Visceral, like you have a real visceral gut feeling, that's the viscera. That's the area within the gut itself. And that's part of the autonomic nervous system. You know, that the digest component just kind of runs on autopilot all the time. And cardiac muscle does as well to a certain degree. Now, you can do things to trick your body into going into and kind of quieting down the stress response that you see. But what you look at is you have this muscle, which is the somatic side, and then you also have the visceral side. And the somatic side is all about the firing of the muscles, and it's all about the communication between the peripheral nervous system up to central nervous system and back down. I'm going to zip through this. Now, I'm at 12 minutes down here and I have 15, so I think this is where I might pause it right here because this is going to get pretty in-depth. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it and save this. And the other thing I might do, the more I think about it, I think I might just load up for my Kinesiology 236 course. There might be some slides there and a couple presentations that I have on my YouTube channel that would be a benefit to you. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here, and then I'll do another presentation.